All right, hey guys, welcome back. We're gonna get to part 2 here of teaching our horse flying lead changes. So the first one, I showed a lot of the pattern or the exercises that you need to have your horse prepared and have the communication, the tools and communication that you need built in to execute a flying lead change, hopefully successfully. And this one, we're gonna jump into some patterns that you can use. So I'm gonna show you 2 patterns that are really common that I use a lot of times when I'm at a clinic or something, helping people change leads. And then I'm gonna show you doing it off a counter canter, which is kind of my preferred way here. I'm not attached to any one of these patterns. You can experiment with your horse, and whatever one you your gut tells you is the better one to try, feel free. The only thing that is kind of the mandatory part of this is you want to be straight while you ask your horse to change leads. If you aren't straight, it's going to be a natural temptation for the human and the horse to go right lead, left lead. Okay, so you have to train yourself to not change directions when you think about changing leads. It's okay if they kind of subtly change directions, but if you do a full-on 90-degree turn and change, even if they do a flying lead change, there's a really good chance your horse had no idea they did a lead change. They're going to be thinking we changed directions, not about changing leads, okay? So that's why I'm going to be pretty particular about keeping that horse straight as we go. And we're going to let the pattern do the work, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that. So the first pattern is you're going to ride down a fence, and you're going to kind of teardrop off to set up kind of the same way we set up the counter canter. So you're going to turn off the corner here, and as I'm turning here, whether I'm trotting or cantering, I'm going to tip my horse's nose to the left. And now my job is to try to ride towards the fence, and I'm loading up her front right foot so that when that foot is on the ground, the hind feet are available to then lope off right there. Okay, so I'll practice this, or I'll have students practice this at walk and trot, and then eventually the goal is to do it at a canter. So the first times you do it at a canter, you don't have to do a flying lead change. You can just get comfortable with the pattern. And when I was saying let the pattern do the work, what I should have done is stopped her down in this corner. So the goal should be to do a teardrop off that, come down the fence, move your horse's body over, you're set up for the new lead, pick up a canter, even if it's from a walk or a trot, and then lope down here and stop. And that will help keep the horse from getting hot, and it helps the rider stay focused on the pattern. So let me go ahead and try that here. Again, I'm not going to be hyper focused on the vertical flexion for this. I want her thinking down to her feet. So we're going to peel off here. I'm going to change the bend to the left. I'm going to ride the horse over to the fence, and right there I could think about changing leads. Okay, but we're working on the pattern right now, so I'm going to take my leg off here, pick up the left lead, ride down here, and stop. So part of the idea behind this is if the horse is thinking about getting relief here because you've tried it at a trot and in a simple lead change where you break down to a walk or a trot and pick up the left lead and go and stop here, and also, you know, be picky about trying to finish and a little bit of haunches in here. If the horse is thinking about getting here, they're going to help you get to this position. And so this is what we're going to use to kind of override their natural instinct to turn when they change leads. Also the rider's natural instinct to think about turning to change leads. So, you know, you would practice this pattern, you know, several times, several days, get it where it feels really familiar, really comfortable before you think about trying a lead change. The next pattern that you could try, and we're going to kind of use the whole arena for this, is think about the arena as you have a half circle on each end of the arena, and there's an X through the middle of the arena that connects your 2 half circles. Okay, this is probably the pattern I use the least, but it does work if you got a horse that has some experience with changing leads, but they're thinking pretty strong about changing directions. This can be a helpful pattern to them. And so it's in that middle straight line where you ask for the lead change. The other benefit to this is it gives you the longest straightaway in your arena possible to try to do this on. Because again, in a small arena, if you did this on the short, you know, the short side, changing leads, they're like running into a wall right away, and they're thinking about changing directions, and so that's gonna hinder you a bit. So I'm just gonna ride this pattern here for you. So again, you have this X that goes through the middle here. So I'm gonna ride down here, And somewhere in here, I'm thinking about picking up my correct lead. Now I'm going to lope my circle, half a circle. Now I'm going to think about turning pretty sharp onto my line, my X. And right here, I'm on a left lead, so I change the bend to the right. And drop to a trot or a walk. Now I pick up my half circle down at this end. Now, if your horse gets impulsive at any point, you could just turn this into a full circle and just come all the way around and then get back onto your half circle. So if she feels more ready this time, this is where I could think about coming down that line, that diagonal through the X. So I'm going to tip her nose to the left. I'm going to push those shoulders over to the right. And now I cued the lead change and I didn't get it. So here I'm going to finish and haunches in and settle. I'm not going to keep going, okay? And that's a big misconception, that it's like you're going to miss lead changes where you cue for it, because what we're not going to do is say, do it now and do it really strong, okay? We're going to avoid doing that, because that's going to scare your horse and get him to run off through the lead change. So by stopping here, lets everything kind of settle down, and you can regroup and then go ahead and try the pattern again. So that's kind of the idea for that pattern. Again, out of the three, that's probably my least favorite. Counter cantering may be my most favorite, but I do that leg yield on the wall pretty frequently, because if a rider doesn't have a lot of experience counter cantering, that first pattern that I showed can be an easier one for them to play with. The counter cantering one, you got to be pretty comfortable about where the horse's body is and their flexion, and while you're cantering, and you got to be pretty darn comfortable with canter. But it is a good thing to practice working on that counter canter. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and try with her. So I'm going to counter canter her and try to set up the lead change from a counter canter this time. Let's go ahead and we're going to do let's do a left to right here. So let me get my bearings. So I'm going to set up a left lead, come down, set up a counter canter, and one of the corners is kind of where I'm going to think about asking her to switch leads when I feel like everything's kind of fixed up. So I'm going to, again, teardrop off here, but here I'm just thinking about counter cantering. Now, before I change leads, I want to feel her weight going to that left side, and I want to have her nose slightly to the right. You don't want to go too much where they're too out of balance. So we're going to push her over here to the left lead, release my leg, and there we got a right lead, but she broke gait. So now we're going to go ahead and stop and let her settle, let her think about that. If I were to keep cantering there's a good chance I would teach her to get impulsive through the lead change. But if she anticipates we change leads and then we stop, that offsets that. Because that is one of the biggest challenges with lead changes, is they think about getting fast through them, okay? Now it's interesting, you know, a lot of maneuvers that I teach you guys and show on these videos, like I can work with the horse and talk and not have to think about it. But I'm definitely not as good of a rider right now for her when I'm thinking about all the things I'm saying to you guys, because there's kind of a lot going on. And to me, that just kind of, you know, lends itself to the difficulty of this maneuver, because there is a timing element to it that I'm not paying attention to while I can think about riding the counter canter and changing the bend and cueing the lead change and all that, but I can't really think about the timing very well while I'm also explaining it. So this next one, I'll do my best to kind of talk through it. But I'm going to focus on her a little more. So there's a timing element to where if I'm on a left lead, when her front left leg goes to the ground, that is the best time to change leads, because that is when both hind feet are in the air. If the horse's feet are in the air, they're very shapeable in that moment. And so that moment comes and goes very quickly. But that is the ideal time to ask your horse to change leads, is when that inside front foot is on the ground. So I'm going to think about getting a little better timing on this one. So I'm going to set up the exact same pattern here. And depending on if I think the horse is anticipating it, I'll kind of decide how they feel. You know, I'm not attached to exactly where I'm going to ask for this change. So I'm going to push her over. There we go. Very nice. So I'm not quite sure if that was a flying change or not. It happened kind of quick. But if it was, there was an improved connection between the first one and that one for sure. And so I'm going to be happy with that and just give her a pet there and let her sit and settle. I'd have to rewind the tape to see the little balk kind of feel that I had. I don't know if she actually committed to a step or not. It wasn't a clean change, but there was definitely an element of improvement. Now, if she didn't change leads, I still would have stopped here and I would have finished in haunches in for the new lead, because it's in the same box in her brain at a standstill, haunches in here, as it would be if she would have stayed at a canter, okay? So building in that pattern is what I mean by let the pattern do the work. You don't have to execute it at a canter in order to be improving on your lead change. And I think that's a big misconception, that it has to happen at a canter or we didn't do anything at all. It's like, that's not true. If you just set up that pattern and you finish in this position and you do it 5 or 6 times without your horse getting emotional, you're going to have a horse that's going to get prepared to change leads, because they're going to be expecting getting relief in this position, because it happens at a standstill. It's easier than cantering, and you're finishing them in haunches in position here. So let's go ahead and try that one more time, because we're having a good time. So I felt a little more connection on that last one, but I think we can get it a little bit smoother today. We're going to give it a try here. Hey, there we go. So I knew she'd be anticipating it a little bit, and so I was trying to be prepared to release her a little bit earlier and not hold her too long through that counter canter, because as you do the pattern, the horse is going to start to have what we call a positive anticipation, and it could be positive, it could be negative depending on how it goes. But if you can time it just right, where that horse is kind of getting prepared to do the move that we've been setting up, you can hopefully execute a nice clean lead change. She didn't feel too impulsive out of that, which I'm really happy with, so I'm definitely going to quit here. That's why I let her lope out of it just a little bit. You don't want to change leads and then immediately stop or walk, because that can start to become a problem later on. So this is about balancing, teaching them what we want, not teaching them things we don't want. And yeah, hopefully this gives you some good tips for setting your horse up for success, changing leads. And it's a high dollar move. It's a really great thing to be able to teach your horse to do. It's very difficult to do, and it's kind of universally difficult, whether it's reining folks or dressage folks. Lead changes are one of those things that like all the professionals talk about, and how to do it, how to set it up, what works better, because it is a challenging thing. So kudos to you if you can get your horse out there, but even if you're not totally ready to change leads, you can start building in the steps and starting somewhere. So don't wait around too long before you start playing with some of these prerequisites, and remember to have fun. Don't scare your horse, don't put too much pressure on them. Let the pattern do the work, and we'll see you on the next one.